Can we start now? All right. So I think the previous class we were discussing about organization. We discussed about various dimensions of organizational behavior, and more specifically the model and the relationships that are of concern in organizational behavior. So we had seen that typically organizational behavior is independent variables that and we try to manage the independent variables favorable outcome. That'll be that managers face in the context of organizational behavior. What are the unique challenges that we face? So I'll be first focusing on general challenges that other we face, and maybe things related to post-COVID challenges we might take up in the next class. So first, I'll focus on the general challenges. Now, stick the original OB thought, the original OB practices, and the original OB management concepts. They were all primarily American concepts. We say Western concepts, but it was primarily American concept. So the original OB principles, the original OB theories, they all emerged from America. So theories you talk about, whether leadership theories or motivation theories or any other theory that we discuss in OB, primarily all OB thought, it came from America, because at that time, in the initial part of the 20th or mid 20th century, when organizational behavior was emerging as a discipline, at that time, most of the leading corporates were primarily American. So whatever theories we were discussing, it was all American theory. So whether it is Maslow's theory or Herzberg theory or any other theory, it's all primarily with an American point of view. So the American concept of capitalism, the American concept of individualism, the American concept of this entire notion of product orientation, technology orientation. So that was the perspective that dominated. So it was all American theories, American concepts, American case studies that we were discussing. Till stages when OB came into existence as a discipline, when management American textbooks, so those OB American concepts. But gradually, what has happened years, there have been other cultures that have become important. The Japanese management practices became important. Rise of Japanese superpowers like Honda and others. Then later on, there were several case studies from India, for instance, that became important. Indian ways of managing organizations, Chinese concepts, of managing organizations, their philosophies became, and they found their way into management textbooks. So a lot of these contexts changed. So OB is essentially just concepts. We discuss international OB, we discuss international concepts because the context has changed. So we are now looking at a more broader perspective to OB. So when I discuss the challenge that we face as OB managers is this cultural awareness. What is this culture all about? How do different cultures, they impact OB? That is of significance. Because the organization is primarily about people. And people don't come in out of a system that exists in a vacuum. They exist in a culture. They exist in a society. They exist in a setting, in a particular context. So whatever we are part of our culture. We reflect our culture. We reflect our society. So basically, as individuals, as members, whatever, as human beings, we are part of a certain culture. So because OB is about people, so the different people may come from, especially in a multinational organization, for instance, you may have different people from different cultures, different countries. So managing all these different cultural outlooks becomes important for OB managers. So we say that we need to have an understanding of cultures, different cultures. So if you're a multinational organization, you may be having an office in Germany and so many other countries. And everywhere the culture would be different. So you have to manage keeping those differences in mind. So when we talk about cultural awareness, we are basically talking about assimilating all these cultural similarities as well as differences and interpret it and what strategies we have to design. So when we talk about culture analysis, there are two, contradictory to keep in mind. One is culture universes, which means there would be certain things that would be common across the world. They are the cultural universals. And then there are cultural differentials. There will be certain things which are different. So there would be both similarities in cultures and there would be both, differences also in cultures. So we have to balance these similarities and differences, and then we have to design our OB strategies accordingly. So people will have certain similarities and people will have certain differences. And both these things have to be understood by OB managers. Now, what is the similarities and differences as far as culture is concerned? So we talk about convergence of culture and divergence of culture. These are two important concepts that we talk about when we talk about similarities and differences of culture. So what is happening globally? Cultures are converging. At time, cultures are diverging. So we say there is a convergence of culture and also there is a divergence of culture. So what is this convergence of culture? So we say that the entire world has become a borderless, village. For several years now, we say now we are a borderless world. Movement across countries is easier. Products, services, technology, information, people can easily move across borders. Cross-border trade is happening on a very wide scale today. So mobility is much more than what it was 20 years back or 30 years back or 50 years back. So the entire world is merging as a borderless world. Okay, so it's convergence of culture which is taking place. We say today we are global citizens. So you may be an Indian or an American or a German, whatever, but you're also a global citizen. What we mean by a global citizen is that you are accessing the same products that people in America are having access to. You are accessing the same services that people in America are accessing. You are accessing the same information that maybe people in America are accessing. So you are a global citizen. You are more mobile. You can travel easily and so on and so forth. So we say today we are global citizens. We have access to the same brands and the same products and the same services and the same information which anybody else in any other part of the country has. So we are not isolated. We are part of the world. We are global citizens. We are consuming global products. So this is what we mean by borderless world. So there is this concept of what is called as McDonaldization of culture. This convergence of lifestyle that is happening today. So this is what we use as a term to explain what is this convergence of culture. So globally, cultures are becoming quite similar. People are similar in terms of lifestyle, in terms of eating pattern, in terms of living pattern, in terms of how we work and how we live and so on. So there is a convergence which is taking place. So which means there are a lot of things which are becoming similar. But at the same time, there is also a divergence of culture. So despite the fact that I may be a global citizen, I'm still an Indian. So I will have certain, Indian aspects to my personality. So there is also a divergence. A Japanese will be a Japanese and an American will be an American and an Indian will be an Indian. So we still are different. We still have that divergence. So, there is a difference which is there in terms of my country, my context, the place I come from. And then, we say there are subcultures. So I may be an Indian, I may belong to Uttar Pradesh, I may belong to Aligarh. So there are several levels of cultures within which I exist. So India has its own culture. UP may have its own culture, Aligarh may have its own culture. So there are several levels of, then my family may have its own culture. So we exist within several layers of subcultures. So basically, that way we are different. So, every individual will be different because they belong to a certain circle of culture. So we are similar as well as different. That is what I'm trying to indicate here. So culture is complex, it is multifaceted, it is dynamic, and the fact is that any individual is different from others and also similar to others. And this is how OB becomes a slightly complex subject. As managers, it becomes a slightly complex issue because to understand any employee, to understand any person, you need to understand how that person is similar to others and how that person is different from others. So there will always be similarities as well as differences. There will always be convergence as well as divergence. So as I said, if you are a manager of a multinational organization and you are managing several subsidiaries, so these subsidiaries will be similar also and they will be different also. So you have to assimilate the similarities and you have to honor the differences. And accordingly, then you have to decide what kind of people management strategies we have to adopt. So there is this cultural complexity which is there. When we are discussing the concept of culture, we discuss about two types of cultures, high context culture and low context culture. High context societies like the Indian society, there are those societies where people, as you can see in the figure, there are a lot of close connections which is there. Lot of close personalized connections. So, we exist in groups. We exist in a very, a close-knit circle of a lot of people who are around us. So our family, our friends, our peers, social networks, all of these things are very important for us, for Indians, for example. So we exist in a high context society. We are closely interconnected to a lot of people. Whereas there are certain societies, for example, we say American society is a low context society, where people do not have so many interconnections, close interconnections. So whatever connections they have, they are for shorter durations, they are for some specific purpose, specific reason, and so on. So it's a low context society. So high context societies are those societies where people are very strongly connected to each other. What is this happening? Mojiz Abbas, why don't you have your mic muted?
Sorry, ma'am.
So we don't have to remind you about this, okay? Please take care, all of you. All right. So low context is where people have, they have, as we said, lesser connections of shorter duration. So it's a low context society. So high context societies are therefore more complex because people have so many interconnections, strongly knitted in a network. So they are more complex to understand. Group culture is very important. Families are important. Social networks are important, as we said. So they are more complex to understand. Communication is more complex and so on. Low context societies are more business-like. They are, you can understand what people basically mean. So they are societies where the context is not very important. In the sense, it is important but very complex to decipher and understand. So societies and countries and cultures may be different in terms of these issues. So there are certain societies which are more individualistic societies, like the American culture. They are low context cultures. Whereas there are certain cultures which are more group oriented, like the Indian culture. It's called as a high context culture. So cultures differ. And because they differ, their complexity patterns may differ. And so those complexities have to be kept in mind by managers to understand people coming from a certain culture. So this is how culture, becomes important in the context of OB. Now, there are separate, as we said, separate topics related to organizational culture, for instance, and all these things that we will take up later. So maybe we'll come back to these issues and discuss more about these issues in later sections. Then the next challenge, which is related to this challenge, is the challenge of globalization. Today, organizations are not existing in domestic markets. They're existing in a global market. Everything connected globally. Your supply chains are, distributed globally. Your customers are spread across the world. Your markets are spread across countries. So we are living in a global world. Companies are operating globally. Even if you're a small company, even if you are operating locally, you are still impacted by global dynamics. So it's an entire influx of global issues, global politics, global economics, which impacts any business organization. So globalization and the trends of globalization, they impact all organizations. And because they impact all organizations, they impact OB also. So for example, there are increased foreign assignments today, there is increased mobility of workers, there are more international perspectives coming up as far as work values are concerned, work practices are concerned. So all of these things, they make the task of OB, of course, very challenging. They make it more complex, but this is how things are. You are existing in a global world. Your company exists in a global context. So the impact of globalization cannot be negated. It cannot be, undone. It will be there. So global context will be there. Global issues will be there. Global influences will be there. And anything that happens globally will impact you. So if there is a global, crisis that happens, if there is a financial crisis that happens, it's going to impact you as a business organization. So we have seen, the economic crisis of 2008 and 10, which started in America, but it impacted the entire world. So anything that happens anywhere, so a disease happens somewhere and then it spreads across the world and it becomes a pandemic and it starts affecting every organization. So basically today we are part of a global network. And if anything happens anywhere, it impacts us. It impacts us as an organization. It impacts our people. And so it impacts organizational behavior. So this is how, globalization is important for OB managers, because every strategy that you design will be part of the larger global context. So globalization, therefore, is both a challenge and an opportunity for OB. Similarly, diversity. Because of globalization, your workforce is more diverse, in terms of gender or age profile or any other nationality or any other demographic variable. So we are, again, living in a very diverse world. Organizations are more diverse. And this diversity impacts, again, your OB practices and OB strategies. So diversity, again, is a challenge as well as an opportunity. We say diversity is good in a certain sense because it enhances creativity. It brings in fresh ideas. It makes you flexible. There are different kinds of people who are working for you. That is good actually, because it enhances the creative processes of an organization. So people will be different, and we have to value those differences. So whether in terms of age or whether in terms of gender or whether in terms of nationality or whatever culture, people will be different. And today's organizations are no longer, monocultural organizations. They are diverse organizations. They have a lot of people who are, who come from different contexts and who have different profiles. And in fact, diversity is valued in a lot of organizations. Today's organizations, they consciously try to have a diverse workforce. So diversity is good. It enhances your creativity. So it's important to understand that people will be different. We must, value those differences. We must not discriminate, but we must differentiate because people will be different. So we have to understand those differences. And accordingly, your communication, your training, your reward mechanism, your motivation strategies, they all have to be attuned to these diverse needs. So, for example, females may have different work demands or different work expectations than males, or younger people may have different work expectations from relatively older people. So we have to value those kinds of differences. So millennials will be different, or Generation Y will be different, and so on and so forth. So today you have a very diverse set of people with whom you may be working. These people will have different perspectives, they will have different demands, they will have different needs, they will have different aspirations, they will have different expectations, they will have different work orientations and work values. And all of these things have to be taken into consideration by OB managers. So managing diversity is also an important issue. When we talk about diversity, just a quick snapshot of the changes in US demography and changes in Indian demography recently in the last 10 years. What has happened? When we talk about US, I'm discussing US because all OB thought has originally come from US. So we know we need to understand how US demography is changing. In the past few years, we have seen that there has been an increase in female workers in the US corporates. Nearly 50% of US workforce is today females. There are more females in colleges and universities in US than men. So about 56% of all college and university students, about 56% of that is females. Now, what does that mean? More females in colleges? What does that mean? What does that forebode for US? This class ends at what time? Today is Friday.
And 12.
12. All right. Can somebody quickly answer that? More females in colleges and universities. What does that predicate? Lata?
Higher sex ratio.
Yes. Keshu.
Higher sex ratio, as females are more than the number of men.
So what does that forebode? What does that indicate?
It indicates
better
my
gender
opinion that-
equality.
Yes,
Safid?
ma'am. That's what I was saying.
Better gender equality.
Gender?
Equality.
Gender equality.
My question is different. My question is that more females in colleges and universities today, what does that predicate for tomorrow?
More females are willing to work.
More females willing to work. So what is happening? Compared to 50 years back, the work profile is changing, workforce is changing. You have more females who are already in the workforce, a significant in the workforce, and a larger number of females expected to join America's workforce tomorrow. Now, that is important for OB because, that is a demographic shift which is taking place. And that means that a lot of things have to be revised. The way you manage people will change because females, as we said, they may have different demands. When we say there are more females, there is more demand for work-life balance and a lot of these issues. So they may have different needs, different demands. They may have different expectations. They also may have different styles of working. So all these things mean that OB practices might change, OB strategies might change, and so on. So this is what we mean by changing demography and its impact on organizational behavior. There's another trend which is taking place. Aging. America is aging. China is aging. Japan is aging. In fact, most of the world is aging. What is this aging syndrome? Aging baby boomers. What is this? Quickly.
Their adult population is more than the younger population.
Not just the adult, the old age population. What is the baby boomer? Baby boom, any idea what it is?
I'm born between 1940 to 64.
That's one generation, okay? People who were born after the Second World War, 50s, and also some part of 60s and so on, initially. Now what has happened to those people? So a lot of people in the Western countries were born, a lot of babies were born in the 50s, 60s, that period, 45 and after that, but a longer set of period. So a lot of babies were born. That is why we call it as a baby boom period. Now what has happened to all those babies? They have all grown old. And because they have grown old, most of them, of course, they are not part of the workforce now. They are retired. And so what is happening is that a large part of the world is above 60. And this is a phenomenon which is, especially significant in America. And as I said, China, Japan also, but because we are talking about America. So there is a large chunk of population which has aged. And because they have aged, they have become old. So they are no longer part of the workforce. They are not producing. They are not contributing to the GDP of the country. In fact, at one point of time when Barack Obama was the president, it was estimated that they were becoming a huge cost, and that is why a lot of Obamacare and all those new policies were introduced, which said that there will be no free healthcare now, and people have to pay for healthcare. And many of those things, they happened because they were becoming kind of expensive for America. They were becoming a cost because in America at that time, most of the healthcare, everything was free for old age people. So the funding was running out. They didn't have the funds to finance their old age people. So what I'm trying to say is that aging baby people available to join the workforce. There is a shortage of young people who can join the workforce. And every from outside and so on and so forth. And so the demography will change. The workforce demography will change. So this is how American demography is going to impact the workforce. And this is how OB will be impacted. Indian demography, what is happening in India? India is a relatively young country. We have demographic dividend. What is this demographic dividend? Demographic dividend is that as far as our population is concerned, the largest chunk of our population is the young people, 25 to, I think, 34 or something, the young age people. So that is the largest chunk of our population. What does that mean? We have a demographic dividend. We have an advantage. We have a good chunk of educated, English-speaking, knowledgeable, skilled workforce ready. Why I'm emphasizing English speaking? Because that is the language of the world. You get access to opportunities outside. So we have a lot of qualified youngsters who are today available to join the workforce. So that is a demographic dividend. Okay, so we have that advantage. We have that as an advantage over the rest of the world. There's a rise in female workers also. There's a rise in student population ratio. Also, there are more people who are joining schools and colleges and universities in India compared to some years back. So more students means more skilled workforce for tomorrow. There's a decline in agricultural workforce and there's a rise in employment in the service sector. So, traditionally we had blue collar workers and agriculture workers, but today we have knowledge workers, intellectual workers. Can somebody tell me what is this blue collar workers? I have a notorious habit of asking questions randomly to anybody, so please be prepared for that. Keshu?
And blue collar labor
and
workers labor.
These questions that I ask and the answers and responses that I get and your participation and attendance, they are always part of our OB evaluation. Okay? All right, Keshu. Continue. Keshu, you were saying something quickly?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, blue collar laborers workers are those generally laborers.
Okay.
Those who generally use manpower for the work.
Ma'am, I think
all right.
skilled workers are blue collar workers.
Skilled worker. Blue collar worker is a terminology that has actually come from the manufacturing sector in the 50s, 1950s and 60s primarily. So blue collar workers are basically the shop floor workers, the factory workers, the people who are actually in the operations in manufacturing sector. And blue collar was simply a term because they were wearing those blue shirts. So blue collar workers, they were called as. So in the 50s, majority of the workforce was blue collar workers. Most of the people were working in factories. Today, majority of the workers, we say, are service, or in the service industry. So if we talk about India, majority of the workers, they are now in the service industry, is the biggest employer today in India. So majority of the workers are in the service industry. There's a large number of workers who are no longer they are not blue collar workers, they're intellectual workers, knowledge workers. So managers, engineers, software professionals, they're all IT experts. They're all intellectual workers. You are an intellectual worker. When you complete your MBA and you join the workforce, you will be an intellectual worker. You will be a knowledge worker. You will not be a blue collar worker. So today, worker profile has changed. We have more of intellectual workforce. We have knowledge workers, and knowledge workers have different style of working. They have different needs. They have different aspirations. as compared to blue collar workers. So the OB of 1950s and 60s and 70s and 80s was different. But OB today will be different because today workforce is different. Worker profile has changed. Workers are more, the workforce is more educated, more aware, more skilled, more knowledgeable, more challenge seeking. Young, dynamic people are joining the workforce. They look for challenges. They look for opportunity. They look for heights. They are not just working to earn bread and butter. They are working to satisfy certain career aspirations and higher order needs and so on. So the profile of workforce is changing. And because the profile of workforce is changing, it is going to have implications for how they are being managed for OB. So how you manage a blue collar worker is different from how you would manage an intel worker. So OB is that way, becoming different. So these are challenges and opportunities which are coming up in OB. Very quickly, before I wind up this last slide, there are several other challenges which I don't need to discuss. So there is more emphasis on quality consciousness today. There is a lot of labor flight which is taking place. People are more mobile. They are switching jobs faster. They are moving to different opportunities faster. So all of these things, they impact how we manage people. There is more customer orientation now. Companies are becoming more customer-centric, customer-responsive. And because companies are becoming customer-responsive and they have to become customer-responsive, so that has implications for employee management because employees have to become customer-responsive. So that has implications for OB. And of course, various other challenges related to managing people are coming up. For example, how to improve people's skills, how to make them more empowered, how to stimulate innovation and change. Things are becoming more and more uncertain. So how to cope up with that uncertainty. So all of these are, people are demanding more work-life balance. So all these are new challenges which are coming up, new issues which are coming up. And OB managers have to confront many of these challenges. They have to grapple with many of these challenges. These are not just challenges. They also are opportunities. So you have to understand that, and you have to design your OB strategies, keeping in mind all of these changes, all of these challenges which are coming up. Because time is over, we'll wind up for today. In the next class, I'll briefly also focus on the post-COVID challenges that have come up for HR and OB managers and how that is impacting organizational behavior in organizations. So we'll take up that. And then once we start with the specific topics, then of course, many of these things we will revisit. We'll come back and we'll maybe focus on various of these dimensions again. So I think we'll wind up for today. Zareen ma'am?
Yes, ma'am, I have taken the picture of the attendance. So I have the record of the attendance.
So anything that you would like to?
I think, ma'am, we have already covered. Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
all right. Okay. Is it okay? So we wind up now for today. All right. Okay. Thank you.